These past 5 years, social interactions they have totally changed. Social media, the remote work, the pandemic, everything has reshaped the way we connect, oftentimes leaving us more isolated than ever. Social interactions can feel confusing at best and overwhelming or even frightening for some people. But you fear what you don't understand. And that's why, as a lifelong introvert, I'm going to share with you the 3 daily habits that have helped me understand people better. So listening is way harder than what most people think it is. If you truly want to understand what people are trying to tell you, you have to listen. And this can sound stupid, but it's essential. Now, the definition is important, and listening means to give one's attention to sound. The key word here is attention. Hearing sounds and active listenings are two completely different things. To listen effectively, you need the desire to understand. This means focusing your attentions on what the other person is actually trying to say. You have to let it occupy in your mind. Put simply, if you don't care about what's being shared, you're not going to listen to it. And this reminds me of being at school on an uncomfortable chair on a Wednesday morning at 7:45. And in that scenario, whatever the person in front of you is trying to say, it might just seem like noise, more annoying than anything really. But because you're so used to it, listening has become kind of robotic. That's a good thing because it takes less energy, but the main drawback is that you're missing half the information as you're just unconsciously listening. To improve your listening skills, we need to bring awareness back into the process. This is harder than it sounds, especially if you're someone just like me who struggles to focus on complex tasks. But it will take time and it's worth it. Because language is complex and not linear, it has layers. There's the verbal part and the non-verbal part, but we get back to this later. And when someone speaks, it's never just the words. It's hearing their voices, the choice of words, intonations, and nuances. Just like music, the same note can sound different depending on how it's played. On top of that, they're not always good communicators, and oftentimes people struggle to say what they truly mean. That's where the layers of communication they matter. It's crucial to listen, not to just hear. Especially during tough or intimate conversation, you need to dive under the surface. You'll need to listen to the true meaning of the words and not just what's being said to you. That's even more true depending on the age. I remember being 16 and trust me, I couldn't use my language properly. Expressing yourself is not that easy. Same thing happens at the workplace. Because of the social norms, people usually filter, trying to be politically correct. They will use tangents and stay on the surface. But by listening harder than the majority of people, you start to notice the nuances and the true meaning of the words. It's like having a superpower in a world where everyone's just skimming the surface. And listening is a skill that's very demanding for your brain. It takes much of your mental space, and a very big chunk of your brain's actually dedicated to language processing. So if you want to give a proper ear, your environment needs to be appropriate because you can't possibly have a conversation with someone that has a remote in their hand and is killing zombies on a 50 inches screen. But anyway, you need to be fully present in order to do the mental work that's associated with listening. Now, when it comes to the daily habit, try to aim for at least one conversation per day where you really listen to the other person. It doesn't have to be 45 minutes long, but just 5 minutes of actually focusing and doing the mental work, trying to really think about the words being shared. If you feel like it's too hard to concentrate, you can close your eyes if your environment is being too stimulating. If you want to be fully present, that can help. Something that Henry Huberman does a lot, so must be good. There's a whole different world that exists beneath the surface. The premise is that just by being in a room, people convey so much. That without even saying a word, basically. In fact, verbal communication is just the tip of the iceberg, and you can't see the rest of it unless you're actively looking for it. Trust me, nonverbal cues are immensely powerful. Your brain is hardwired to decode these silent messages coming from other people. This tool is designed for survival, and it's your compass to guide you through your social interactions. Just like everyone else, you are doing it every day, you just aren't aware of it. But if you decide to take a closer look and try to understand what their body is actually communicating, you will start to piece together how people truly feel. This isn't magic, it's just a product of social evolution. An important thing is that it's universal and unique at the same time. Kind of weird, but let me hold on. So what the hell is nonverbal communication anyway? Well, only the lips move, but the whole body talks using gestures, facial expressions, movements, proximity, everything. When you look at the nonverbal of someone, you're trying to understand displayed emotions. For example, if a woman tells you that she is pregnant while looking at the ground versus she tells you that she's pregnant while smiling, well, you will analyze it differently, and she said the exact same thing, right? And here's why this isn't magic. You really don't need a PhD in order to understand that tears and sobbing is someone that's sad. Yet if you extrapolate that and you search for smaller cues, then you'll be able to become much better at understanding emotion and how people display them. And at the same time, you want to be aware of the fact that everyone displays emotions differently and that culture has a lot to do with it. But what I'm trying to say is that if you truly want to understand someone, you'd have to get to know a little bit about their nonverbal communication as well. And all of this is about being present, observant, and curious, especially if you're new to searching for these kind of cues. People may not always verbally say how they feel, but their emotions often play out right in front of you. And while observing someone's body language can be a good start, their face often tells the real story. Humans, much like animals, they have facial muscles that send signals to the world around them. This form of communication is largely unconscious because once upon a time we were just tribes and we needed to quickly understand the intentions of other humans and animals. So pay attention to the cues that are right in front of you, and this will give you a complete understanding of the person that's right next to you or even talking to you. So for the daily habit, I think I started this when I was young, probably around 14. So I want you to sit in front of the TV and watch a drama. You don't have to watch all of it, just the interesting bits, because actors are paid to display emotions. So this makes it kind of the perfect exercise. You have to focus on their faces, and especially it's going to be close-ups during emotional scenes. And with a pen and paper, just wrote down the nonverbal cues and then connect it with what they're saying verbally. It's a simple yet effective way to sharpen your understanding of nonverbal communication and to connect it with what you hear. Asking questions isn't just about getting answers. It's a sign that you're really trying to understand. But remember that what you ask matters, right? So not all questions are helpful. Like asking someone to repeat themselves in the heat of an emotional discussion, that really can break the flow. So before firing off a question, take a moment to think, has this already been covered, or is this really relevant? When you're fully engaged, listening and observing, you'll find yourself come up with some pretty interesting questions. Think of a conversation like a tree, okay? You have countless branches and possibilities, and each question that you ask lets you hop on a different branch. Through asking, you're guiding the conversation. And a few good questions can often do the trick. You can't ask everything because time's limited, obviously. At the same time, too many questions can feel overwhelming. And at the same time, too many questions can feel overwhelming. But most of the time, a few good questions will be sufficient. So filter your questions, because a couple of well thought out, thoughtful ones can really make all the difference in the discussion. Again, it's not about being perfect. It's about cutting out the fluff. So if you want to understand people better, not only you have to ask them questions, but it needs to be the right ones. Again, that's a skill you can work on. So if you're like me, most of the time you've had a meaningful conversation with someone, you replay it in your mind later on. You're like, I should have said that in the context instead of this. And this is the perfect opportunity to think about the golden question, which is the one question that you'd want to ask the person if you were to replay the scenario again, because you had time to look back on it and reflect. So write it down, and every time the questions will naturally pop up in your mind as you're having the conversation. So listening, observing, and asking, these are skills, human skills. And just like every other skill, you can work on them, you can get better at them with consistency and time. Communication is complex, right? But guess what? If you're a human, then you already have all the tools that you need in order to become good at it. The secret to dealing with people is really about paying close attention. Most often than not, people will reveal to you exactly what you need to know about them, sometimes even without fully realizing it. In the meantime, no pressure. You'll find me here if you need it, and trust the process.